The morning sun had barely reached its peak when the woman parked her old pickup truck in front of Westfield Community Bank. She glanced at herself in the rearview mirror and sighed. Her hands were rough from the morning's work at the family farm, dirt lingering under her fingernails despite her best efforts to clean up. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She hadn't planned on coming to the bank today, but the tractor had finally broken down beyond her husband's ability to fix it. She reached for her worn leather purse and checked that she had everything she needed: ID, checkbook, and the quotation for the new farming equipment. The withdrawal would be substantial, but the farm needed that equipment if they were going to make it through another season. Just a quick trip, she mumbled to herself as she stepped out of the truck. Her jeans were faded but clean, though the knees showed signs of the morning's work in the garden. Her flannel shirt was tucked in neatly, but it too had seen better days. The boots she wore were practical rather than fashionable, scuffed from years of honest work. As she walked toward the gleaming glass doors of the bank, she couldn't help but feel a bit out of place. The building itself seemed to shine with wealth, all polished marble and sparkling windows. It stood as the tallest structure in their small town, a monument to financial success that seemed a world away from the struggling farms that surrounded it. The security guard at the entrance gave her a once-over as she approached. His expression changed slightly, his welcoming smile dimming as he took in her appearance. She nodded politely as she passed him, pretending not to notice the way his eyes followed her with suspicion. Inside, the bank was bustling with activity. Men in crisp suits and women in smart business attire moved with purpose across the shining floor. The ceiling soared high above, making her feel even smaller than she already did. The cool air smelled faintly of perfume and polish. She joined the line for the tellers, clutching her purse close to her body. The woman in front of her, dressed in an expensive-looking suit with perfectly manicured nails, seemed to step slightly farther away when she noticed who was standing behind her. The woman pretended not to notice this either. While waiting, she observed the bank employees behind their counters. They all looked so polished and professional, their name tags gleamed against their uniforms, and their smiles seemed practiced as they helped customers. Through the glass walls of the offices to the side, she could see managers meeting with clients, laughing and shaking hands. This world felt so different from her morning of fixing fences and feeding animals. For a moment, she thought about her husband, away on his business trip. He would have been more comfortable here. People always took him seriously, even when he was dressed for farm work. There was something about the way he carried himself that commanded respect. The line moved forward slowly. With each step, she became more aware of her appearance. The mud that still clung to the sides of her boots despite her attempts to clean them off, the calluses on her hands, the simple gold band on her finger that needed polishing. A young mother with a child moved into line behind her. The little boy looked up at her with curious eyes, and she smiled warmly at him. The child smiled back before his mother gently pulled him closer, whispering something in his ear that made him look away. As she neared the front of the line, she noticed how the teller's eyes would briefly meet hers before quickly moving on to scan the rest of the lobby, as if hoping for more suitable customers. She took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. The farm equipment wouldn't buy itself, and she had every right to be here, just like anyone else. Finally, it was her turn. She stepped up to the counter, unaware that what should have been a simple transaction was about to become the most humiliating experience of her life, and the beginning of something no one in the bank could possibly expect. The young teller behind the counter looked up as the woman approached. His welcoming smile faltered slightly when he took in her appearance. He straightened his tie, a nervous habit, and cleared his throat. "Good morning. How may I help you today?" His tone was professional but noticeably cooler than it had been with the well-dressed businessman who had just left. "I need to make a withdrawal," the woman said, placing her ID and bank card on the counter. "It's a large amount. We need new equipment for our farm." The teller picked up her card with 2 fingers as if it might be dirty. "And how much will you be withdrawing today?" he asked, typing her account number into his computer. $28,000, she replied. The teller's fingers froze over the keyboard. He looked up at her, eyebrows raised. "I'm sorry, did you say $28,000? She nodded and pulled the equipment quote from her purse. "Yes, I have the quote right here." Our tractor finally gave out, and we need a replacement before planting season." The teller glanced at the quote, then back at his computer screen. His expression changed to one of suspicion. "Just one moment, please." He picked up his phone and whispered something she couldn't quite hear. While she waited, the woman noticed other customers watching her. An elderly man shook his head slightly. A woman in a business suit clutched her designer purse closer. The farm woman felt her cheeks growing warm. A few moments later, a tall woman in a tailored navy suit approached from one of the offices. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, and her lips were pressed into a thin line. The gold badge on her chest indicated she was a manager. "Is there a problem?" the farm woman asked, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. The manager stood beside the teller and looked down at the computer screen. Then she looked at the woman, her gaze traveling from the mud-stained boots up to the simple ponytail. "Ma'am, could you please step aside? I need to speak with you privately," the manager said, gesturing toward a small meeting room to the side of the main lobby. "I just need to make a withdrawal," the woman insisted, feeling a knot forming in her stomach. "The money is for farm equipment. It's our account." "Step aside, please," the manager repeated more firmly. "We need to verify some information." Reluctantly, the woman gathered her things and followed the manager to the small glass-walled room. Everyone in the bank could see them, and she felt like a specimen under a microscope. Once inside, the manager closed the door and turned to face her. "I'm going to be direct with you. The account you're attempting to withdraw from has a significant balance. It's one of our premium accounts." "I know," the woman replied. "It's our farm account. My husband and I." The manager held up a hand to stop her. "The account belongs to one of our most valued clients. He's a prominent businessman. Now, how did you get access to his card and ID information?" The woman blinked in surprise. "What? That's my husband's and my joint account. We've had it for years. Look at the ID again." "Ma'am, I don't know how you obtained this information, but I cannot allow you to withdraw funds from this account." The manager's voice had grown louder, and people in the lobby were now openly staring. "Call my husband then," the woman said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "He can verify." "I'm calling security," the manager interrupted, reaching for the phone on the small table. "And the police, if necessary." "This is ridiculous. That's our money," the woman protested, her voice rising with frustration. "Just check the signature card. Look at my driver's license." But the manager had already dialed a number. "Security to meeting room 3, please." The farm woman felt tears of anger and humiliation threatening to spill. She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "This is a mistake, a terrible mistake." Within moments, a security guard appeared at the door. The manager opened it and spoke in a voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Please escort this woman out of the building. She's attempting to access an account fraudulently." The security guard, the same one who had eyed her suspiciously when she entered, now took her by the arm. "Ma'am, you need to come with me." "Don't touch me," she said firmly, pulling her arm away. "I can walk out by myself." Heads turned as she was led across the lobby toward the exit. Whispers followed her. A young bank employee snickered behind his hand. The well-dressed woman who had stood in line ahead of her earlier shook her head in disapproval. With as much dignity as she could muster, the farm woman walked out into the bright sunlight, the security guard following close behind. Once outside, he watched as she made her way to her old pickup truck. She climbed inside and sat there for a long moment, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Then she reached for her cell phone. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Her husband needed to know what had just happened. And when he found out how she'd been treated, there would be consequences no one in that bank could imagine. The woman's fingers trembled as she dialed her husband's number. She sat in her truck, parked in the corner of the bank's lot, trying to collect herself. The spring breeze ruffled through the open window, but it did little to cool the burning humiliation on her cheeks. After 3 rings, her husband picked up. "Hey there," his warm voice came through the speaker. "Everything all right at home?" She took a deep breath, fighting back tears. "No, something happened at the bank, something awful." "What's wrong?" His tone immediately changed, concern evident. "Are you okay?" "They threw me out," she said, her voice breaking slightly. I went to withdraw money for the new tractor, and they treated me like I was trying to rob the place." A moment of stunned silence followed. "They did what?" His voice was calm, but she recognized the controlled anger in it. After 15 years of marriage, she knew that tone all too well. "The manager accused me of trying to steal from our account. Said I was trying to access one of their premium clients' money. They wouldn't even look at my ID properly." She wiped a tear from her cheek. "They called security and made a big scene in front of everyone." She heard him take a deep breath. "Tell me exactly what happened. Start from the beginning." As she recounted the humiliating experience, she could picture her husband on the other end of the line, sitting in his hotel room in the city, probably pacing as he listened. He was supposed to be away for another day, meeting with agricultural suppliers, a trip they had planned months ago. "They never even checked the signature card," she finished. "The manager took one look at me and decided I couldn't possibly belong to that account." "Because of how you were dressed?" her husband asked quietly. "I guess so. I came straight from the fields. The tractor broke down completely this morning, and I didn't have time to change." She looked down at her work clothes. "But it's our bank. We've been customers there for years." Another silence followed, longer this time. She could almost hear him thinking. "I'm coming home," he finally said. "Today. Now. But your meetings." "Can wait," he cut in firmly. "This is more important." She sighed, feeling both grateful and guilty. "They're not going to let us withdraw the money. How are we going to pay for the new equipment?" A small chuckle came through the phone, surprising her. "Don't worry about that. We'll get the money. And a few other things sorted out too." Something in his voice made her pause. "What are you planning?" "Just a small lesson in customer service," he replied. There was an edge to his voice that she recognized, the same one he used when negotiating tough deals or standing up to people who tried to take advantage of small farmers like them. "Don't do anything crazy," she warned, knowing her husband's sense of justice could sometimes get the better of him. "Not crazy, just right." He paused. "You know, I've been thinking about making some changes at that bank for a while now. This might be the push I needed." She frowned, confused. "Changes? What do you mean?" "We'll talk when I get home. I should be there by dinner time." His voice softened. "Are you okay to drive back to the farm?" She nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. "Yes, I'm fine. Just embarrassed." "You have nothing to be embarrassed about," he said firmly. "They're the ones who should be ashamed." After they hung up, she sat in the truck for a few more minutes, watching people come and go from the bank. From wealthy business owners to ordinary workers depositing their paychecks, each person walked through those glass doors expecting respect and service. Only she had been found wanting. She started the truck and pulled out of the parking lot, driving past the bank's large sign. The gold lettering caught the sunlight. She hardly ever paid attention to it, but today she looked at the name displayed prominently: Premier Community Bank, founded by local businessmen. What most people in town didn't know, what that manager and teller clearly didn't know, was exactly who that local businessman was. Her husband never made a big deal about owning the bank. He preferred to stay behind the scenes, focusing on their farm and other investments. He was on the board of directors, sure, but he rarely visited the branches in person, handling most business remotely or through representatives. As she drove home along the familiar country roads, past fields preparing for spring planting, her humiliation began to turn to anticipation. Tomorrow would bring a very different kind of visit to Premier Community Bank. And while she wasn't usually one for confrontation or drama, she had to admit she was looking forward to seeing the look on that manager's face when her husband walked through the door. By the time she pulled into their farmhouse driveway, she was actually smiling. Sometimes life handed you small moments of justice, and hers was coming soon. 2 days had passed since the incident at the bank. The woman stood in front of the mirror in their bedroom, adjusting the collar of her blouse. She rarely dressed up like this, a simple navy skirt, white blouse, and low heels she bought years ago for her cousin's wedding. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and she even put on a touch of makeup. "You look beautiful," her husband said, appearing in the doorway. He was dressed in one of his few suits, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, crisp white shirt, and a deep blue tie. It was what he called his business armor, worn only for important meetings and special occasions. "I feel strange," she admitted, turning to face him. like I'm playing dress-up. He smiled and crossed the room to stand beside her. You look every bit as professional as anyone in that bank. More so because you actually know how to work for a living. She smoothed down her skirt nervously. Aren't you sure about this? We could just go to another branch or use the online banking. No, he said firmly. What happened to you was wrong. It needs to be addressed. He took her hand. Ready? She nodded, drawing strength from his confidence. After 15 years together, they'd weathered many storms, failed crops, market crashes, family illnesses, but they'd never faced something quite like this. The drive to town was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. When they pulled up in front of the bank, her stomach tightened at the sight of the familiar building. Remember, her husband said as he turned off the engine, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Hold your head high. Inside, the bank looked exactly as it had 2 days before. Polished marble floors, high ceilings, well-dressed employees moving efficiently behind their counters. The woman felt dozens of eyes on them as they walked in, her husband's hand resting lightly on the small of her back. The security guard, the same one who had escorted her out, straightened up immediately upon seeing her husband. His eyes widened in recognition. "Good morning, sir," he said, suddenly the picture of respect and deference. Her husband nodded curtly and continued walking, guiding her toward the teller area. The young teller who had served her before was at his station. He looked up as they approached, and she saw the moment he recognized her. His face went pale. "I need to speak with your manager," her husband said, his voice calm but commanding. "Ah, yes, sir, right away," the teller stammered, picking up his phone. He whispered urgently into it, his eyes darting nervously between them. While they waited, the woman noticed how differently people were looking at her today. No one was keeping their distance or clutching their purses closer. Instead, they were curious, even respectful. The power of a good suit and proper posture, she thought, or perhaps it was simply her husband's confident presence beside her. "What exactly are you going to say?" she whispered to him. Before he could answer, the manager appeared. She was the same tall woman in a navy suit who had called security on her. Today, her professional smile froze on her face when she spotted the woman standing there. Then her eyes moved to the husband, and genuine confusion crossed her features. "Good morning, sir. How may I help you today?" "I think we should discuss this in your office," he replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. The manager blinked, then nodded. "Of course. Please follow me." As they walked through the main lobby toward the manager's office, the woman could feel the energy in the room shift. Bank employees paused in their work, watching. Customers turned to stare. Something was happening, and everyone could sense it. The manager's office was spacious, with large windows overlooking the town square. Awards and certificates hung on one wall. A small nameplate on the desk displayed her title, Branch Manager. "Please have a seat," the manager said, gesturing to 2 chairs opposite her desk. She seemed confused, but not yet worried. Her husband waited for the woman to sit before taking his own seat. "I understand there was an incident here 2 days ago," he began. The manager's professional smile remained in place. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, mister." "My wife came in to make a withdrawal for farm equipment," he continued, ignoring her prompt for his name. $28,000 from our joint account." The manager's smile faltered. Her eyes darted between them, realization slowly dawning. "Your wife?" "Yes," he said simply, "my wife. The same woman you accused of fraud. The same woman you humiliated in front of your entire bank before having security escort her out." The color drained from the manager's face. "There must be some mistake. We have security protocols," which clearly failed, he interrupted, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel beneath it. "My wife presented proper identification. She is a joint account holder. Yet instead of providing service, you provided judgment." The manager's hands fluttered nervously on her desk. "Sir, if there was a misunderstanding, I deeply apologize, but you have to understand." "What I understand," he cut in, "is that your staff made assumptions based on how someone looked, not on the documentation they presented." The woman sat quietly, watching the manager squirm. It should have felt satisfying to see her discomfort, but instead, she felt a strange mix of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also sadness that this situation had happened at all. "Perhaps we should start over," the manager suggested, extending her hand across the desk. I'm the branch manager here at Premier Community Bank. Her husband looked at the outstretched hand but didn't take it. Instead, he reached into his inner suit pocket and removed a small leather wallet. He flipped it open and placed it on the desk between them. The manager's eyes dropped to the ID card inside, then widened dramatically. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Yes, he said quietly. I believe you know who I am now. And I think it's time we had a serious conversation about how this bank, my bank, treats its customers. The manager's face had turned the color of chalk. Her hands trembled slightly as she stared at the ID card on her desk, the card that identified her visitor as not just any customer, but the founder and majority owner of Premier Community Bank. I had no idea, she stammered, looking back and forth between husband and wife. We weren't expecting a visit from the owner. Clearly, he replied, his voice level. Tell me, do you make a habit of throwing legitimate customers out of this bank? The manager's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. There must have been some confusion. Our security protocols are very strict when it comes to large withdrawals. That's not what happened here, the woman said, finding her voice. She sat up straighter in her chair. You took one look at me in my work clothes and decided I didn't belong. Her husband nodded. My wife presented valid ID. She's a joint holder on our account. Yet instead of following proper verification procedures, you made a judgment based on her appearance. Sir, I assure you, don't. He held up his hand. Don't say it was a mistake or a misunderstanding. My wife was publicly humiliated because of how she was dressed, because she came in here with dirt under her nails after working on our farm. The manager looked desperately toward the door, as if hoping someone would rescue her. I deeply apologize for any misunderstanding. Of course, we'll process your withdrawal immediately. That's not why we're here, the husband said. He leaned forward. I want to know how many other hard-working people have been treated the same way. How many farmers, laborers, or everyday folks have walked into this bank and been judged by their appearance rather than treated with respect? A knock at the door interrupted them. The young teller poked his head in, looking nervous. Excuse me, but there's a situation in the lobby, he said. Not now, the manager snapped. But ma'am, the district supervisor is here for the quarterly review, and there are reporters outside asking questions about the owner's visit. The husband smiled slightly. News travels fast in a small town. The manager looked like she might faint. Reporters? Outside my branch? I may have mentioned to a few people at the diner this morning that we were coming in, the husband admitted. Word gets around. Please, the manager begged, can't we handle this privately? I'm sure we can come to some arrangement. The husband stood up. Actually, I think we should continue this conversation in the lobby, where everyone can hear it. His wife looked at him questioningly. Are you sure? He nodded and offered his hand to help her up. This isn't just about us anymore. As they walked out of the office, the manager hurrying behind them, they found the bank lobby had grown crowded. The regular customers were still there, but now they were joined by several farmers in work clothes, a few small business owners from town, and even a couple of people with press badges hanging around their necks. The district supervisor, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, stood near the entrance, looking confused by the gathering crowd. What's going on here? He asked as the three of them approached. The husband stepped forward. I'm the founder and majority owner of this bank, he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet lobby, and I'd like to address something important. A murmur ran through the crowd. The tellers behind their counters stopped working to listen. The security guard by the door stood at attention. 2 days ago, my wife came into this branch to withdraw money for farm equipment, he continued. She was treated with suspicion, accused of fraud, and eventually escorted out by security, all because she was dressed in work clothes after spending the morning in our fields. People in the crowd exchanged glances. One older farmer nodded in recognition, as if he experienced something similar. This bank was founded with a simple mission, the husband went on, his voice growing stronger. To serve our community, all of our community, not just those who wear suits or designer clothes. The manager stepped forward. Sir, I want to assure everyone that what happened was an isolated incident. Was it? He challenged. He turned to the crowd. I'd like to hear from anyone else who's been made to feel unwelcome in this bank because of how they look or what they do for a living." For a moment, no one moved. Then an older man in overalls raised his hand. "They made me go through extra checks to cash my own check last month," he said. "Said my ID looks suspicious. I've been banking here for 30 years. A woman in a housekeeping uniform spoke up next. "They wouldn't let me open an account without extra proof of address." The lady at the next desk didn't need any. One by one, people began to share similar stories, small indignities, extra hurdles, subtle signs of disrespect they'd encountered at the very bank that was supposed to serve them. The district supervisor looked increasingly alarmed as the stories mounted. The manager seemed to shrink with each new account. The woman watched her husband as he listened to each story with genuine concern. This was why she had fallen in love with him all those years ago, his deep sense of fairness, his refusal to look the other way when something was wrong. He had built this bank from nothing, starting with a small loan and a big dream after they'd been turned down for farm financing by every other bank in the county. He knew what it was like to be judged and dismissed, and he had promised then that his bank would be different. "Enough," he finally said, raising his hands. The crowd fell silent. "I think we've heard enough to know this isn't an isolated incident." He turned to face the manager and the district supervisor. "Starting today, things are going to change at Premier Community Bank. Real change. And it begins with how we treat every person who walks through these doors." The woman stood beside her husband, her earlier embarrassment completely forgotten. Sometimes justice came in unexpected ways, and sometimes it took someone seeing you at your lowest moment to help create change for everyone. All eyes in the bank lobby were fixed on the husband as he stood there, commanding the room not with volume but with quiet authority. The district supervisor dabbed at his forehead with a handkerchief, clearly unsure how to handle this unexpected situation. "What exactly are you proposing?" the supervisor asked finally, his voice barely carrying across the now silent lobby. The husband looked around the room, making eye contact with the farmers, housekeepers, mechanics, and everyday working people who had shared their stories. "I'm not proposing anything," he said firmly. "I'm making changes, effective immediately." He turned to face all the bank employees who had gathered in a nervous cluster. "I founded this bank 20 years ago after every other financial institution in the county turned us down for a farm loan," he began, his voice carrying easily now. "They told us that small family farms were bad investments, that we didn't fit their customer profile." His wife stepped closer to him, their shoulders touching in silent support. "I promised myself then that if I ever had the chance, I would build a bank that served everyone in our community with equal respect. Somewhere along the way, that vision got lost." The manager attempted to speak, but he held up his hand. "Today, we're going back to basics." He looked directly at the district supervisor. "I want every employee in every branch to undergo new training, and I don't mean those corporate videos about customer service. I mean real training about treating people with dignity, regardless of how they dress or what they do for a living." A soft murmur of approval spread through the crowd. "Second, I want a review of every loan application that's been denied in the past year. I want to know if we've been turning down good, hard-working people because they don't fit some image of what a valuable customer looks like." The district supervisor nodded weakly, scribbling notes. "Third, I want new programs specifically designed for the working people of this community. Farmers need specialized financing options that work with harvest cycles. Hourly workers need accounts without minimum balance fees. Small business owners need loans that don't require collateral they don't have." He paused, looking around the room again. "This isn't just good ethics, it's good business. The people in this room built our community. They deserve a bank that works for them, not against them." The teller who had first turned away his wife stepped forward hesitantly. "Sir, if I may ask, are you firing us?" His voice trembled slightly. The woman looked at her husband, curious about his answer. She knew his sense of justice, but she also knew his capacity for forgiveness. The husband was quiet for a long moment, considering. Everyone in the bank seemed to hold their breath. "No," he said finally. "That would be the easy thing to do, but it wouldn't solve the deeper problem." He looked at the teller, then the manager, and all the other employees. "Instead, I'm giving you all a chance to be part of the solution. to rebuild this bank into what it was always meant to be. His expression was serious but not unkind. Some of you may not want to be part of that change. That's your choice. But for those who stay, this is your opportunity to make things right. The manager stepped forward, her earlier arrogance replaced with something that looked like genuine remorse. "I'd like to start by apologizing," she said, looking directly at the wife. "What happened to you was inexcusable. I made assumptions based on your appearance, and I was wrong." The wife nodded, accepting the apology without comment. It was a start, but words were easy. Actions would matter more. The husband turned to the crowd of customers. "I'd like to invite all of you to be part of this change too. We're forming a community advisory board that will meet monthly to review our practices and suggest improvements. I want people from all walks of life, farmers, teachers, construction workers, everyone. This bank belongs to this community, and your voices should be heard." An older woman who cleaned houses for a living raised her hand. "Does that mean regular folks like us can really have a say in how things work?" "Exactly," the husband confirmed. "No more decisions made only by people in suits behind closed doors." The atmosphere in the bank was transforming before their eyes. What had started as a confrontation was becoming something else, a moment of genuine change, of possibility. The wife watched with pride as her husband continued outlining his vision. This was why she had fallen in love with him all those years ago, his ability to see beyond anger to what could be built from difficult moments. As the impromptu meeting continued, customers began talking excitedly among themselves. Bank employees who had initially looked terrified were now listening attentively, some even nodding in agreement. The district supervisor had filled 3 pages with notes. The wife caught her husband's eye across the room and smiled. Her humiliation had led to something unexpected, a chance to rebuild not just their bank, but perhaps even some of the divisions in their community. Sometimes, she thought, the worst moments can become turning points if you have the courage to stand up and speak the truth. And sometimes being underestimated is just the beginning of proving what's really possible. 6 months had passed since that day in the bank. The morning air was crisp with early autumn as the woman parked her pickup truck outside Premier Community Bank. She smiled at the new sign that had been installed just last week, "Serving all our neighbors since 2005. She wore her usual work clothes, faded jeans, a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and her trusty work boots. Her hands were still rough from the morning's work in the fields, and a smudge of dirt marked her cheek. But unlike that day 6 months ago, she walked toward the bank's entrance with her head held high, without a trace of hesitation. The security guard, a new one hired after the previous guard had chosen to leave, greeted her with a warm smile. "Good morning. Lovely day for the harvest, isn't it?" "Perfect weather," she agreed. "The corn's coming in beautifully this year." Inside, the bank looked different. Not in any dramatic way that visitors might immediately notice, but in dozens of small, meaningful changes. The cold marble floors remained, but now local artwork hung on the walls, paintings of farmland, photographs of workers in the fields, handmade crafts from the high school art program. Comfortable chairs had replaced the stiff benches, and a coffee station offered free drinks to anyone who came in. But the biggest changes weren't in the decor. They were in the people. The woman joined the short line at the teller windows. The young man who had refused her withdrawal 6 months ago was still there, but his demeanor had transformed. He chatted easily with an elderly farmer, helping him sort out a problem with his account without a hint of impatience. When it was her turn, the teller's face lit up with recognition. "Good morning. Here for the farm equipment program meeting?" "Just checking in to see how everything's going," she replied. "My husband's tied up with the harvest today." The teller nodded. "The program's been a huge success. We've approved 15 new equipment loans in the past month alone." This was one of the changes her husband had implemented, a special financing program designed specifically for local farms. Flexible payment schedules aligned with harvest seasons, lower interest rates, and practical collateral requirements had made it possible for many small farmers to upgrade their equipment. "Is the manager in today?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. She's in a meeting with the Community Advisory Board, but she should be done soon." The woman nodded and took a seat in the waiting area. From there, she could see into the large conference room where the manager, the same one who had thrown her out, was meeting with a diverse group of community members. A construction worker in his dusty work boots sat next to a teacher with lesson plans spread in front of her. A young mother with a baby on her lap was speaking, while everyone else listened attentively. This was perhaps the most significant change of all, the Community Advisory Board that met monthly to review bank policies and suggest improvements. Real people from all walks of life making real decisions about how their bank should operate. The former district supervisor, who had been demoted after that fateful day, passed by with a nod of recognition. He had chosen to stay and work under the new system, proving himself surprisingly adaptable once he understood the bank's renewed mission. As the woman waited, she watched the everyday business of the bank unfold around her. A young man in a fast food uniform was opening his first account, guided patiently by a bank officer. An elderly woman in a housekeeper's uniform was being shown how to use the new mobile banking app on her phone. A farmer in mud-caked boots was discussing crop insurance options with a loan officer who listened carefully, taking detailed notes. The conference room door opened, and the Community Advisory Board members filed out. The manager spotted the woman and approached with a genuine smile. "I wasn't expecting you today," she said warmly. "How's the harvest coming along?" "Almost finished," the woman replied. "The new tractor made all the difference." The manager nodded. "I'm glad to hear it. The farm equipment program has been more successful than we anticipated." They chatted for a few minutes about the latest changes at the bank. The manager was a different person now, humbled by her mistakes but determined to be part of the solution. She had thrown herself into the new vision for the bank with surprising enthusiasm. "You know," the manager said thoughtfully, "I was just saying to the board that what happened with you was the best thing that could have happened to this bank. It forced us to confront problems we'd been ignoring for years." The woman smiled. "Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best changes." "Your husband stopped by yesterday," the manager continued. "He mentioned you might be interested in leading our new agricultural outreach program, teaching financial workshops for farming families." The woman hadn't known about this. It was just like her husband to set something like this in motion without telling her, knowing she'd be perfect for it. "I might be," she said, surprised by how much the idea appealed to her. As she left the bank a while later, paperwork for the new position in hand, she paused to look back at the building. 6 months ago, she had walked out of those same doors in humiliation, escorted by security. Today, she walked out with purpose, with respect. The incident that had seemed so terrible had become the catalyst for real change, not just for her, but for an entire community. Sometimes life worked out in unexpected ways. Sometimes being underestimated was the first step toward revealing your true worth. And sometimes a simple woman in work clothes could help transform an entire institution, one small step at a time.